Right. So in our previous classes of TypeScript, we have learned some programming basics like strings, arrays, loops, conditional statements, and so on. So from today, we're going to start object-oriented programming concepts. So before that, so let us understand what is an object. Okay, and then we will see how to create an object, how many ways we can create object, when to use objects, and so on. So first of all, what is an object? So in real world example, whatever we can see, everything is an object. So every object means that object contains certain properties. Any object, if I take, contains certain property and certain behavior. Okay, so every human being is an object. Every animal is an object. Every bird is an object. Right? Every item, whatever we are using day-to-day basis, everything is an object. So if I look at any object which contains certain properties and it contains certain behavior, okay. So object is nothing but what? Is a group of properties which contains certain number of properties and also a behavior, which is basically called as an object. Okay, that is a real world definition. And when you come to programming part, the same kind of a nature will be there in programming also. In the programming, we can define an object is a group of properties and behavior. Properties are nothing but we can consider them as a variables. Behavior is considered as a methods. Okay, so an object contains a properties and behavior. Similarly, an object in technical point of view, an object is a group of variables and methods. So when I create an object, what the object contains? The object contains a variables and methods. Okay, we'll see some examples. Let me go and create new project, new folder. So I'm creating new file objects.ts. Okay. So I'm talking about objects. Okay. So what is an object? Object is considered object contains properties and behavior. Object is nothing but a properties, a group of properties and a behavior. So for example, let's take animal, right? So any type of animal which is having certain properties. It will walk different, it will drink different, it will eat differently, it will having different color, right? It will having different height. So height, color, these are all comes under properties. Okay, eating, running, sitting, these are all comes under behavior. So when you look at an objects will be seems different based upon their properties and their behavior. Okay, so in technical point of view, what is an object? Objects are same thing, same definition again. Object contains properties in the sense what? Variables. In programming languages, we consider properties means what? Variables. And behavior we will define in the form of method or methods. So what is a method is exactly same as a function. So how we have created a function contains certain body. And whenever you call the function, that will be executed. The body, whatever we have written inside the function will be executed. Similar way, here we have a method. Same function inside, if I write inside a object, if I create a function inside an object, we can call it as a method. That's the only difference, okay? So especially in JavaScript and TypeScript, there is another difference for object. It is a collection of, object is collection of key and value pairs. Key and value pairs. So this is the additional definition which we have only in JavaScript and TypeScript. Object is a collection of key and value pairs. Again, key and value pairs means again properties and behavior only. So all properties we will define in the form of key and value pairs. Again, key and value pairs in the sense variable. Key, every key is a variable. We should not say directly variable, but property means a key and behavior means a method. Okay, this is the additional definition which we have in JavaScript and TypeScript. So once start learning, so you will understand what exactly this key value pairs. Okay, so this is a generic definition. Object contains the properties and behavior. And the second definition will be matched in other programming languages is best suitable definition for Python and Java. In Python and Java, simply we can say object contains variables and methods. But when you come to JavaScript or TypeScript, the third definition will be more suitable. It's a collection of key and value pairs along with methods. We can also define the methods, and variables we can define in the form of key and value pairs. Okay. So these are the definition of what is an exactly object means. Okay. So how many ways we can create? First of all, let us start with how to create an object. Okay. So let's see some examples. Employee. Employee is an object. Can you tell me some of the objects, some examples? What are the examples of object? Employee. If I take an employee in an organization, every person is an employee, right? Employee is basically an object. Okay. And can you tell me some of the properties of an employee? What does employee is having? Employee name, right? So designation, salary, right? So department. So these are all comes under the properties of the employee. Every employee is having these details, right? The values can be different, but the details are definitely every employee is having. Similarly, what are the behavior in the sense what are methods? So every employee can have bonus, right? So every employee can get the bonus. So to calculate the bonus, we will create some method. Similarly, if you want to print the details, if you want to capture the details of employee, we will create another method. Let's say get emp details, like that. And to add some value or to add some data to the variables, we can also create another method called set details. Set details, like that. So these are all comes under the behavior. We can create them in the form of methods. Okay. So employee is an object which contains certain number of properties and certain behavior. Behavior in the sense what? It is a methods. In the form of methods we can create. Okay. So it's an example. Similarly, if I take student is also an object. So what are the different properties we have? Student name, again, student name, student ID, okay, and a grade, something like this, marks, and all these things comes under what? Properties. Okay, these are all properties. And again, when you come to the behavior or methods, so what are the methods we can create? So grade we have. So what are other things we can create? What are the things we can calculate for the student? We can get the details of the student. So get the details of the student, and also we can set the details of the student. Okay. So similarly, can create a number of methods based upon our requirement. So these are the simple examples for an object. So what is an object? An object represents set of properties and behavior. Set of properties and behavior. Okay. So if you go for another programming languages, either Java or Python, if you want to create an object, you must create a class. Okay, first we need to create a blueprint. What is a class? A class is a blueprint. And even class contains a variables methods we will first define. And once you create a class, based on the class or by using a class, we can create a number of objects. We can create multiple objects. But in JavaScript and TypeScript, we have a different ways to create an object. So we also have a method to create an object using a class. Even JavaScript and TypeScript also supported object-oriented programming concepts. So we have a class concept also. And that is one of the approach. So by using a class, we can create an object. But other than that, there are some other ways provided in TypeScript and JavaScript. So without using a class also, without creating a class also, we can simply create an objects. Okay. So there are many ways to create an object in JavaScript and TypeScript. So we'll see what are those approaches and how many ways we can create an object. And finally, we will also discuss about a class, how to create a class, how to create an object with the class, all those things. Okay. So creating an object using a class is a different approach, indirect. So if you have a class, we can create an object. But without having class, we can also directly create an object. We can directly create an object even though if you don't have a class. So that is a facility which we have in JavaScript and TypeScript, both. Okay. All right, so now we'll see how many ways we can create an object. So majorly there are four different ways I will discuss here. One is using general object type and using a type variable or type keyword and using aliases and using class. Okay, these are the different ways we have to create an object. Okay, so I will define this, how many ways we can create an object. Different ways to create an object in JavaScript as well as TypeScript. So it will applicable for both the JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay. So what are those different ways? So first one, using object type. Object is a keyword. Okay. So by using object type, we can directly define the values of the variable. So we can create an object with that. And the second method is inline type object. I'll tell you what exactly it is. So you can also define the data type of the keys. There's no much difference between first two. In the first approach, we don't specify the data types. Normally in JavaScript approach. Second method, we specify the data types. So that is the reason second approach is only for TypeScript, not for JavaScript. Okay. The first approach will work both on JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay, JavaScript and TypeScript, because we don't specify any data types. But in the second approach, we specify the data types. So only it supports only TypeScript. And aliases, classes are there in both JavaScript, also in TypeScript. Classes concept is available only from JavaScript 16th version, which is a latest Java version. We can call as a ES 16. Okay, JavaScript ES 16 is the latest version of JavaScript, and also TypeScript is also supported. Okay, so these are the four different approaches. Now, so we'll see one by one. So I'll show you different examples so you can understand. And we will discuss other ways to create an object. First three different approaches, we do not have a class. Only the fourth approach, we can create a class, and through the class, we can create an object. Okay. Now, first, let us start with the first one. So how we can create an object using object type. Okay, object type. So that is the first approach. So using object type, we can directly define the values of the variables. So the TypeScript object type represents all the values that are not primitive. So TypeScript object type represents all values that are not primitive. So what is the primitive types we have in TypeScript? Can you tell me what are the primitive types? In the first beginning classes, we have discussed this: primitive and non-primitive. Primitive in the sense what? String, number, Boolean, right? So these are all primitive. And there are some non-primitive also. So what is meaning of non-primitive? So non-primitive means array is also comes under the non-primitive. Tuple comes under the non-primitive. So whichever the variable allows the different type of data, that is all comes under non-primitive. Okay, whichever variables or whichever the structure which is allowing a different kinds of data, which is all comes under non-primitive. Okay, so object representing a non-primitive actually. Okay, object is simply representing non-primitive. Means when I create a variable with an object, we can store any type of data which is non-primitive. So the TypeScript object, okay, so type represents all values that are not in primitive types. So union is not a separate operator because we don't have a union keyword. So we are combining two different data types by using OR operator. So that still comes under the primitive only. Okay, that is, we can say it is not non-primitive, not a primitive also. Okay, because union is not comes under either primitive or non-primitive because we are combining two different types using OR, but we don't specifically having union. Okay. All right. So now we'll see some examples how to create an object using object keyword. Very simple, very easy. We can simply say using let keyword, how we will create a normal variable, simply like that. So I can say employee. Employee is nothing but an object name I'm giving. So whenever you create an object, that should be keep inside the curly braces, and the value should be in key value pairs. Okay, object is a collection of a key value pair. This is the definition we have to follow according to the JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay. So let employee is an object equal to start with curly brace. So inside the curly braces, we can specify the keys and values along with the methods and everything. So employee, what are the attributes or properties of an employee? Name. So let me create a name, colon, and we can specify the value of the name. So let's say I'm giving some value here. So this is one property. Name is John is one property. We need to use colon, not equal to. Okay. We should not use equal to. This is a property. So whenever you create a property, we should specify with the colon symbol. So name John. This is one property of the employee. And let's say age. Age is also another property of an employee. Let's say age colon 30. Comma. Salary is another property of an employee. Let's say 50,000. Job is another property of an employee. Let's say he's an engineer. Okay, so these are all called what? Properties of an employee. So in this approach, we directly specify the values for the properties. We are directly adding the values also along with the property. So using object type, we can directly define the values for the variables. So we can consider this name, age, salary, job. These are the variables or properties, and we are directly define the values. We are directly assign the values to the variables. So when you define this here, employee is what? An object. So we can use one keyword called object. Okay, this is a one way to create an object. So only properties are there. So we haven't created a method. So we can also create a method inside this curly braces. So one limitation here is when you say only object, right? When you intentionally specify this keyword object, it is allowed only the key value pairs. That means only properties we can store. So we cannot create a methods. Remember this, okay? When I use this object keyword, we can store only properties. It is not allowed methods. But if you don't specify this object, by default, employee will be considered an object. In addition, it is also allowed to create a methods inside the curly brace. So that is one limitation which you have in this approach. I'll tell you. So I'm just creating an object. Okay, this is a one way to create an object. For now, I don't have any methods. I just have only properties. So if you want to keep them in different lines, you can keep it. So for example, let's say I'm creating like this. In the next line, I can keep these values. Every statement is separated with a comma like this. So like this also you can create. So this is another way. So we can put everything in single line or you can put in multiple lines. So now employee is an object. Employee is an object. So using object type, we can create an object. In this approach, we can directly define the values into variables. Okay, this is an object. Suppose if you want to add a method also, so as I said before, an object contains the properties and also methods. So I want to add some method. Let's say every employee, I just want to display these details. For that, I want to write a method. So how to write a method? Observe this carefully. So this is one thing I'm showing you. This is one syntax. In the syntax, we can write a method. We cannot write a method. I'll show you. So I've written the same thing again. So this time I will also write a method. Let's say how to create a method. Again, method is also should be in key value pair format. Okay, the method is also should be in the key and value pair. So I'm creating a method called get details. This is just a variable. And I'm creating an anonymous function. So I don't want to give any name to the function. Any function you can write. Anonymous function, normal function, named function. All functions you can write it here. But when you write a function inside the object, we can call it as a method. Okay. So I'm creating a function. And this is an empty function. It's not having anything. So inside the function, I will implement something. So what I'll implement? So because the data is already assigned to the variable, I will just return that particular data, or I just want to print the data. So let us return the data. So what I'll do, return statement, and name I will return. Okay, and can we put comma like this? Name, age, salary. At the time of returning, we should not write like this. If you just want to print, you can do that. But at the time of returning, we should not do that. Okay. So what I can do now, we can simply try to print the values, or you can return the values. I say console.log of. I'm just printing the data. I say name, age, salary, job. Okay, these are the only values we have, right? So name, age, sorry. So can we access the variables directly here? I say just name. So we cannot directly access it. Okay, so we need to uh, use a return statement here. We cannot directly access the variables. Let me use, let's return. Okay, we will catch them into variables again. So return, and I'm keeping inside the backtick so that I can access the variable using dollar. So there is another way actually. So if you will try this, we just want to print console.log of. Console.log of. If I try to access name directly, it is not allowed. Okay. So we need to explicitly specify something called this keyword here. So this dot name. So what is this represent? This is a keyword which is representing the current object. Okay. So if this is representing the current object, so this dot name, similarly you can say this dot age, comma, this dot salary, comma, this dot job. Like this, we can print the details. So what happened to salary? Dot. Okay. So this is how we can simply print that. If we just want to return, you can use a return statement, and this will return the entire values. Okay. So this is how we can create an object. Now just observe carefully. I put the div object also. If I just try to remove the object. Okay, so still it is accepting. Okay, this is the one way to create. Let me just create another way. So instead of doing this, yeah, this dot name, yeah, it should be comma. Okay, so let me keep this object. So as of now, it is allowing. Okay, so let me try to return the statement and see. So return, I just want to return all the data as it is. So using backlit operator, I'm accessing the data. So dollar sign in the curly brace. So this dot name. Okay, this is fine. And comma. We should not use commas and everything inside the backtick. So we should continue this. So I'm just writing like this is a again dollar sign, this dot job earning. Okay, again dollar sign, curly brace, this dot salary, and close brace. So if you want to return this, you need to do like this. Okay, so I think this is also allowed. So when I create an object using an object keyword, we can define the variables along with the functions. Probably in the JavaScript, it may not allow you. Okay, but here it is allowing in TypeScript. Perfectly fine. Okay, so I just created some variables in the key value pairs, and also we can create a method like this. So what this method will do, this method will return the data like name, age, salary, name. I think age we have not printed. Okay, so that's fine. So I have just returning the three values, name, job, and a salary. You can just remove the age. I don't need it. Okay. So this is how we can create an object using an object type. So even though if you don't specify this object, by default, this employee will be considered as an object. Okay, by default, this employee will be considered as an object. Now let us see whether it is an object or not. So what is an object contains now? There are three properties, one method. There are three properties and there is one method. Okay, so now let's see how we can do this. Let's keep this object. Now let's see how to know the type of this object. Suppose this is an object. How we will know whether it is an object or not? How we can confirm? We can still use a type of operator. Okay, so how we can use console.log of type of employee. So this will exactly return whether it's an object or not. Let's go to the terminal and just type. So here day 13 objects.ts. Perfect. It is returning object. Okay. So the type of employee is what? An object. Okay, perfectly fine. So we created one object and we have added some properties and also we have written a method. Also, we confirm whether it is an object or not using type of operator. Now, we'll see how to access the data. So how to access the variables, how to invoke the method from the object. Accessing object. There are multiple approaches again. So accessing the data or accessing the variables and method from the our object. So approach one. There are multiple approaches. This is one of the approach. Approach one. Here we use a dot notation. Using dot notation. So using dot, suppose I want to access name. Simply we can say employee dot name. Similarly, employee dot salary, employee dot job. Similarly, if you want to call this method, simply say employee dot get details. So all this data we can access using object by specifying dot operator. Dot is a notation. See how we can do it outside of the object. So here the object creation is done. Okay, but we need to access this object or object variables or methods outside of the object. Okay, so here even though we are not specifying any return type, by default it will be considered as a string because we are returning the whole part is a string, right? The backlinked operator. So if you want, you can also specify the return type like this. Okay, so return type is optional. So by default, it will consider the type is a string. As soon as you return something, depends on the value, it will consider as a string. Okay, now let's see how to access the properties and variables along with the methods. Approach one, using dot we can access. For example, let's say console.log. Now I want to access name, salary, job. How can we access? Using object employee dot name. That's it. So this will actually return the data of the employee. So observe carefully. Here it is started giving an error. If I put the cursor here, property name does not exist on type object. Property name does not exist on type object. So this is the problem we will get. So when you try to access the data or when you try to access the method directly from the object, what will happen? This is the problem you will get. So to avoid this problem, simply we should just remove the object. So previously I told you, right? So when I put this object, the method at the time of accessing the data will be a problem. Okay, so if I don't put this object, by default it is an object. So now we are getting the access from the data and the methods. This is one limitation which we have in this particular approach using object type. Okay, so if you put this object like this, then what happens at the time of creating an object, there is no problem. It won't show any problem. But at the time of accessing this data outside of this object like this, then it is start giving the error. Okay, so that's the reason. For now, let us try to remove the object type. Now we are able to access here. Similarly, we can also access other details like employee dot salary. Similarly, employee dot job. Okay, so this way we can access the data employee dot name, employee dot salary, employee dot jobs. So this will actually print the data of the employee object. So like this. So we have given only 3 properties. All 3 properties have been printed. Okay, now what about this method? How to invoke this method? So to invoke this method, simply it is returning some output, right? So what we can do, we can call this method inside the console.log. So if you want to call the method get details, simply you can say employee dot get details. So do we need to pass any parameters to this? No, right? You can simply empty bracket. So this will invoke get details from employee object will be invoked, and this method will print the data of the employee object. Because it is returning the output, we should put that inside the console.log. Here I'll keep console.log like this. So this is one approach. Using dot notation, we can access the data from the object. So we can access the variables directly like this. And we can also call the methods directly from the object. Okay, accessing the object. So let us execute. And now you'll see this is an output. John is an engineer earning 50,000. So this is the output. So this is the John is a engineer earning salary. So I'm just printing just like a sentence. Okay. So this is one approach to access the data and methods from the object. And remember the limitation here is what? When you create this as an object, and here we cannot access the variables and methods directly like this. This is a problem. Okay. So don't specify this. By default, TypeScript will know this is an object. Okay. Now, so is there any other way to access? So this is the dot notation. So by using dot, we can directly access the data and methods from the object. Now there is another approach, accessing an object, approach 2. So here we use something called a bracket notation, using bracket notation. So how we can access? Same thing, but this time we will use a bracket. Suppose let's take this one. I want to access individual data variables. So instead of using a dot, simply you can put that inside the bracket. So when you put the bracket, you should also include that. Basically, what is the name? Name is a key. John is a value. Salary is a key. 50,000 is a value. So the data is aligned in the key value pairs. So here, when you specify the key inside the bracket, we should put in the double quotes. Okay, similarly, instead of employee dot salary, you can put the salary in the bracket and keep that in the double quotes. Similarly, employee job. So keep the job in bracket and then keep inside the double quotes. So this is another notation. So using bracket, we can also access the variables. So when I execute, it will display the same thing. This is the same output. So whatever output we are getting earlier, same output you will get. Okay, but how to call the method? Using dot notation, if you want to call the method, you can do like this. Console.log employee, keep this get details method inside the bracket. Okay, get details inside the bracket, and don't specify the bracket inside the curly, inside the square bracket. Just put this get detail method inside the double quotes. Okay, and the bracket, the open braces should be there, right? Where we need to specify that outside of the bracket here. So this is the way we need to call the method from the object using bracket notation. Employee, name of the method we should put in the double quotes, even in the brackets, main name of the method. And after that, you need to use open braces. This is square bracket, this is open bracket. Okay. And this will also invoke the get details method from the object. So when I execute, you will see the output. Okay. So this is an approach 1. And this is another approach. Using dot, most of the times we go with the dot itself. Okay, this is the most familiar. Most of the times we use this. So these are the 2 different notations which we have to access properties and methods from the object. Okay, Suppose I want to modify one of the value. So this is my object which contains certain variables or some data. Now I want to change some data. I want to modify some data inside the object, but I don't want to touch this object directly. So how we can modify the value? So to modify the value in the object, so modify the value in the object, simply we are able to access the data, right? So employee.name, employee.salary, employee.job. So we are able to access it. Same way, try to access one of the element. I say employee.job. I'm accessing it. So what is the previous value we have? We have an engineer. Now I want to make it as a manager like that. Simple. So you can directly access the variable and you can assign the new value. So this is how we can modify the value on the object. So this is again dot notation. And again, if you want to modify this using bracket, you can also write like this. Employee bracket, we can put the job in the double quotes. So we are able to access with this notation. And directly you can put manager. This is also correct, either this one or this one. You can go with one of the approach. Okay, so after modification, again, I just want to see whether it is modified or not. So how we can access it again? Console.log of employee.job. So you can print something like this. Okay, say modified job is here. I'm just trying to print. So here modified job what? Manager. So this is how whenever you want to modify something inside the object, we can access them using object name and we can still modify it. Okay. So this is how we can create an object using object keyword. Object keyword. Okay. Clear, everyone? This is the one of the approach. There are multiple approaches. Among them, this is the first approach. So using object type, we can directly define the values of the variables. And this particular approach is applicable for both JavaScript and also TypeScript. Are you specifying any data types here while creating an object? No, we are not specifying any data types, right? So this exactly same thing in JavaScript also. But if you specify the data type specifically, like name is a string, salary is a number, job is a string, like that, and that comes under the TypeScript. That is another approach. So first we will define the data type of the variables along with the value. So that is the second approach. We can call it as an inline type object. Call it as an inline type object. So the first approach is applicable only JavaScript. Even TypeScript also it is applicable because in the TypeScript we have a type inference feature. So because of that, the data types by default assigned to the variables. Even JavaScript also it is allowed. Okay, but when you go to the second approach, inline object type, this approach is only for TypeScript because we intentionally specify the data types. But JavaScript data types are not allowed. So this approach is only for TypeScript. So now let us see the second approach. So how we can create an object using inline object method. So this is second. I just try to separate this. So we have done with the first approach. Now the second approach, inline type object. So in this, we define the data type of the keys. There is no much difference. The first one, second one is almost the same. The only difference is instead of directly writing the variable keys like this, we will also specify the data type explicitly. That's the only difference. Okay. And we'll see how we can create inline type object. Inline type is nothing but what? We directly specify the type of the variables inside the object itself. Let's say name is a string, salary is a number, job is a string, something like that. So inside the object itself, we will specify the type. So that's the reason we can call it as an inline type object. Inline type object. Okay. Now let me show you an example. So let's take a different object this time. Employee we already used. So let a student. Okay, let me take a student colon bracket. So student is an object. Now I want to add some of the properties in the form of key and value pair. So name is what is the name? Name is a property. And what is the type of the name? string. Name is string. I'm not assigning the data. Remember this. I'm just specifying only data type. Now age. Age is what? A number. Student age is a number. Grade. Grade is also string. Now I will also create a method. Let's say get summary. This is a one method I'm creating. And method is also we need to create in key value pairs. Okay. So here get summary is a key colon and method and arrow mark I'm using and return type is a string. Now tell me what type of function it is. Named function or anonymous function or arrow function? Arrow function. Okay, here I'm writing arrow function. Okay, so now this is called object declaration. We have just defined the structure of the object. We have not assigned any data. Okay, we have just created an object with the structure. We haven't assigned any data to that. There is no data for name, age, grade, and get summary. We have not implemented this method so far. Okay. So in inline object type, first we will create a structure of the object. So once you create a structure, then we'll assign the data. How to assign the data is equal to. So from here to here, this is finished. Okay. Creating the object is got finished. Now we are trying to assign the data. So here equal to, again, start curly brace. So this is a structure. This is a structure. Now, according to the structure, we will assign the data here. In the second curly brace, we will assign the data. So now take the variable. Name is what? Let's say Scott. Some name I'm giving, comma. Age 15. Grade, let's say, which is string, right? So I say A. Now we need to implement this method. So this is just a declaring the method. So now here we need to implement. So how to implement this method? So write the same method like this. Get a summary colon. String is a return type here. So we need to implement this. So implementation. Return. I'm returning this. Return backlit operator. Again, I'm using $, curly brace. So I want to access name. How to access the name inside the object using this keyword. This dot name. This is one. And is $, again inside the bracket, this dot age, and I can say some simple meaningful sentence, years old, and is scored grade. Again, I'm accessing grade here. $, curly braces, this dot grade. Okay, so this is how I'm just returning the statement. So do we have a name here? Yes. So return backlit operator. So $, this dot name, which is a Scott, is this dot age, and years old, scored grade. Okay, perfectly fine. You can see when we already defined the return type here. So again, at the time of implementation, we no need to write the return type here. We can simply remove this. Again, if you have only one single statement, return type is optional. Return is optional. So here I just remove the return. Even if you want to keep this, no problem. Okay, that's not a problem. Okay, so at the time of implementation, this is basically what? An arrow function. Get summary arrow function. So because this method is returning something, we are holding it into get summary. Get summary is what? A key. Get summary is a key and the value of the get summary is, so this one. So it is giving some error. String only refers to the type, but is being used as a value here. Property name does not exist in the type of global this. Can you guess what is an error here? So we put comma here. All three commas are there. Yes. So get summary. So this is an arrow function. So I just try to remove this. So let's add a keyword called function. Okay, remove the return type and remove the arrow. So let me write a normal function. So I think we missed something. Okay. So look at this. This is a normal function I have written. So at the time of declaration, I'm using the arrow function like this. But at the time of implementation, I'm just using anonymous function. So why? Because when you create any function like this, we need to hold it into the particular key. Okay, particular key we need to use. Declaration and assignment is a lot of difference. In the beginning sessions, we have already declared, we already discussed. Declaration means what? Can anyone tell what is the declaration? What is an assignment? Suppose if I create a variable using let, suppose let x is a number. It is just a declaration. We haven't assigned any value here. Then in the next step, if I assign some value, this is called assignment. Okay, this is called declaration. We are declaring the variable as a number. And later on, we are assigning the data to the variable. Same way, here we declared an object first. This is object declaration. We structure the structure how the object should be. We defined here. And the later on, by using equal to, we assign or we have added some data to the variables and we have implemented this method. Okay. So at the time of implementation, we must have this key. So try to implement the function. Try to use this as an anonymous function. Okay, so now we have created an object declaration equal to, and we have assigned the data to the object. This is called inline type object. First a declaration using data types, especially we specified, and then we have assigned the data. In the previous approach, we directly assign the data to the variables. We haven't specified declaration separately. We directly assign the data. That's the reason it's a direct process. Directly define the values of the variable. This is the direct. But this is indirect. First, we declare an object. We define the structure of the object. Then we assign the data into the object. Okay. Now, if you want to display this data, we can simply call this method. Get summary method, we can simply call. So how to invoke this? Console.log of. What is an object name? Student, right? So student dot get summary. And do we need to pass any parameters? No parameters. That's it. So when you call this method, automatically this method will be able to return all the values that will be printed by console.log. And still, if you want to access the data, you can access still student.name, student.age, student.grade. You can separately access it. Okay, let me run this, and this is the output we are getting. So this is one approach. Inline type object. Okay, inline type object. First, we declare an object, structure we define, and later we'll assign the data. Okay. Now, in this particular approach, there is a problem. So what is a problem? Suppose if you want to create multiple objects, like student object. Here, the student is one object. I want to create another student object, student one, student two. Every student is having same kind of a data. The data will be different, but the key is are same. Every student is having name, every student is having age, every student is having grade, every student is having same kind of a behavior. The values can be different, but every student is having the same structure or not. Every student is having the same structure. Now, if you want to create multiple student object, 69, what is a 69? Here it is an equal to, because in this particular object, we are assigning this particular data. Just a very simple case, you can say, when I say let equal to x is a number, this is the declaration. Now, if we want to assign the data into x, how we will assign? Using equal to, right? X equal to 10 like that. Similarly, here I define the object structure, just like this one. And after that, I'm assigning the data to the object, just like this. So equal to is required. So this data will be assigned to this variables. Okay. So equal to is mandatory. Right. So now in this approach, inline type approach, there is a problem. So when there is a problem, because if you want to create a multiple student object, every student is having the same structure. Okay. So for other students also, I need to again define the structure one more time. For example, I want to create another student object. So how to create let student one. Okay, again, we use the same kind of a structure. This is mandatory. And again, we can assign the data to the object. We can assign the data to the objects. For example, let's say I will try to assign some other data equal to data. So this is an object creation and declaration. And here we are assigning the data. So this is got closed. This object is got closed here equal to. So this is a method. There is another bracket is missing. Okay. Now you can see this is another student object. So first student object we already created, also assign the data. Now second student, another student object we created and assign the data. If I look at this example, even student and student one, the structure is exactly the same. Here and here the structure is exactly the same. Or the type of the student is exactly same. The whole structure we call it as a type. So the type of the student and type of student one is exactly same. So if you create multiple objects of the student, you have to define the structure also multiple times. For every student object, you need to redeclare the structure multiple times. This is a repetitive activity. This is a repetition activity. So this is the problem in this particular approach. So we need to repeat the structure for every object. The same structure we need to write again for student one. Again, if you create a student two, again, you need to write the same structure. For every student object, you need to repeat the same structure. So that is a problem here. So what is the problem with the inline object? The need to create the structure multiple times. For every object, we need to create the same structure. So that is a problem with the inline object. So need to repeat the structure for every object. So to avoid this particular problem, we have another approach called alias. Okay, using type alias, we can overcome this problem. Means what? We can create a structure only once. We can reuse the same structure for multiple objects. Okay, in the third approach, we will create a structure, object structure only once. We will create an object definition only once. We can use it multiple times for multiple objects. So that is an advantage of aliases. Okay. In the second approach, the problem is what? We need to create a structure or declare the object for multiple objects. Even if you create 10 objects, 10 times you need to declare. At 10 times you need to create a structure. To avoid that, we will create a structure only one time. We can reuse it in multiple objects. So that is a third approach. So let us see the third approach. So in the first approach, in the first approach, we don't have that approach problem because what? We are directly assigning the data there. So if you want to create another object, you can create just like this, employee, employee one, like this. So here we don't have that problem because we are directly assigning the data. We are not defining the structure. Okay. But in the second approach, inline type object approach, first we are declaring the structure and then we are assigning the data to the object. So if we create another object, again, we have to redeclare the structure and again assign the data. So we need to repeat this for every object. This is the problem with the inline approach. Now, let us see the third approach. Again, if you want to call this student one dot get summary, this will also return the output. So this is an output we are getting. So for every object, we need to create a structure. That is a problem with the inline type object. Right. So now let's go to the third approach. We can overcome by using alias, by using type alias. Is a third option. So using type alias allows creating a new name for an existing type. We can declare an object only one time and we can use the same declaration for multiple objects in multiple times. We no need to write the structure multiple times. And this is allowed only TypeScript. Even alias is also supported only in the TypeScript, guys. Okay, not in JavaScript. Only TypeScript, this approach is there. Okay, we'll see how to do this using type alias. First, you have to know what is a type of an object. And you need to know what are the properties are there for the object. Let's see one example here. I'll say example one. I'm creating an object called as a product. For example, let's say product equal to I'm creating. So what is the type of this product? I'm saying type keyword here. So first I will declare the structure, and the same structure I will reuse for multiple objects. So that is an approach we follow here. First we will create the structure only once, then we will reuse the same structure for multiple objects. So here to create a only structure, I use a type operator, type alias. So inside this, as usual, you can specify all the properties. Let's say I'm taking product is my an object. So name is what? Let's say string type. Name is a string type. And price is what? Price is a number type. Price is a number type. Along with that, I'm also creating a method. So let's go and create a method here. Let's say get info colon. And at the time of declaration, I'm saying arrow function. Okay, so this is a declaration. And I've not created an object. I've just created structure of the object, which is type keyword. Okay, now we can reuse the same structure for multiple objects. Now I'm creating one object called a book. Let's say book 1, right? So here, this is an object. So now we need to specify the type. So how we will create a normal and object like this, you can create, right? So book 1, open arrow brace core. Here we will specify all the properties and methods. Now, what is the type of this book? Product. So that you need to specify like this, right? So now what will happen? Whatever the structure we defined here, the same structure will be applicable to the book 1. Whatever structure we defined here, the same structure we applicable for the book 1. Now, what is the name, price, get info is there in the product. Same name, price, get info will be there for book 1. So just understand the difference between second and third approach. In inline declaration, we are directly specifying the structure for the object. So now what I'm doing, this structure, whatever I defined, I separated the structure into the another variable called product. Now at the time of object creation, I'm using this product here, structure. Instead of writing the whole thing, suppose if you want to write this, you can write. If I don't want to specify like this, this is correct. This is an object declaration, but I'm not writing. If I write like this, what's the problem? If I create another object, suppose if I create a book 2, again, you need to redeclare the structure like this. This is a problem in the second approach, inline type object. So instead of doing that, I'm declaring the structure in the separate variable like this using type operator. Now this product, instead of writing the whole structure, I'm just using product. That's it. Instead of writing the whole structure, I'm using product. This is the use of type. So now let us implement this. So let book 1 colon product. Here we can assign the data to the variables. Now let me assign. So name, product name, let's say learn Java, some product name. Then price. Price is what? Price is a number. Price is a number. I say some 300. Price. Okay, and what else? Get info. The method we need to implement. Get info colon, and what's the name we have given? There is no name given to the function because an arrow function. So we just implement this using function keyword. Function, and return type is string. Even though if you don't specify the string, return type is an optional. Inside the function, I'm returning the details of the book and price. So these two details, I'm trying to return it. So I can say return backtick operator. Inside this, I'm accessing the variable. Say dollar. And using again this dot name and cost dollar, this dot price, and close the statement. Okay, so I declare the type first, product, which is having name, price, and get info, one single method. Now I'm declaring the object. So when you're declaring an object, you can just look at here. We use a let book 1, type is a product. Here we need to say equal to also. Okay, equal to. So book 1 product equal to, this is the value because we are assigning the data. So you must use equal to. Okay, we are assigning the data. So you must use equal to. So we declare the objects separately and we assign the object separately. So because you're using the same structure, we can create multiple objects. So you can say another object I want to create, let's say book 2. And same structure, again, same structure I'm using here, product. And instead of learn Java, I can say another book, let's say learn Python. Let's make it as a 500. Right? So similarly, I can create another object with the same structure. So again, same product type of object, book 3, and you can say learn JavaScript. Make it 600, and this will print. So now how many objects we created with the same structure? 3 objects we created. Okay, so in the previous approach, what is the problem? Even if you create a structure inline, the same structure we need to write again in every object. So instead of repeating the structure in every object, we just create a structure only once, and we repeat that. We just use the same structure in every object creation. Okay, you understood the difference between second and third approach, using inline approach and using type alias approach. So these are the two different approaches. So with this, we can overcome the problem in the second approach. So in the second approach, the problem is what? At the time of creating an object itself, we are creating the structure and immediately assigning the data. So if you want to create another object, again, we have to write the structure and assign the data. But in the third approach, what I'm doing, I separated the structure into another variable called type. We need to specify. This is not object. Product is not an object. Product is what? It's a type. Type in the sense customized type. It's a non-primitive. We created our own type. Using type keyword, we can create our own types. So what is a product type? Product contains a name, price, and get info. So here I have applied the type. So book 1 is what type? Product type. Book 2 is also product type. Book 3 also product type. What is product? Product is nothing but this one. This is the structure we have in the product. Okay. So once you created the structure, we can repeat this in multiple objects. We can create n number of objects by using a same structure, which is called type. Okay. Now, if you want to invoke all these objects once, immediately I'll try to invoke console.log of book1 dot get info. Similarly, I'll call method from another objects. Book2 call get info. Book3 dot get info. So when I execute, it is not giving the output. Function dot get info. So we are missing some implementation. Are we giving the right information? So get info bracket string is return type is okay. And at the time of implementation, get info function, it is returning something, right? So somewhere we are missing something. Parenthesis book1 product equal to curly brace is okay. So name we mentioned, price, get info is a function we mentioned, return type, this bracket is got closed. Yeah, just a moment. This is a get info. This is also get info. Yeah. This is also get info. Yeah. So we are missing the bracket actually. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. So when you call a method, we should specify the bracket. So that is most important. So now we got a output from 3 objects. So this is the information from the first object. And this is from the second object. And this is from the third object. So everybody is clear on these 2 approaches. So 3 approaches we discussed so far. The first approach is using object type. Second approach is inline method. Third approach is using type alias. 3 approaches we can create an object. In the first approach, we directly assign the data to the object. In the second approach, we explicitly specify the data types of the variables, then assign the data. In the third approach, first we created our own type, and the same type we are reusing in multiple objects. Okay. So this is how the TypeScript is got provided. So these are the different approaches. There are many ways to do it. Whichever you familiar, you guys can use that approach. Okay, so if you want to solve one single problem, there will be multiple solutions, right? Similarly, in JavaScript, TypeScript, or not only this, any other programming languages, there are multiple approaches will be there. Okay, now these are the first three approaches. Now, there is one more approach using classes. So this is most important. Okay, most of the times we prefer to use fourth one. This is the latest trending one. So this is the latest features which are included in the new features of JavaScript and TypeScript. So when you're working with the objects, most of the times we use classes. So why we need to learn all these approaches? Because in interview point of view, these are important. For practical usage, we don't use all these approaches. We always go with one approach, which is class. By using class, we will create an object. Even in other programming languages also, this is the only approach we have using class. Okay. So as to other than fourth one, so first three options are there in TypeScript. Only interview point of view, they are important. Otherwise, we don't use them. Okay. So we will see that how to use looping and everything. Here, it is not much important. So that's the reason I'm not covering that part. And if you want to extract the data from the object using loop, you can use for in loop. Using for in loop, you can extract this data. You can extract this data using looping statement itself. So for example, let's say the book product is a book 3 is there. So I want to extract this data using looping statement. You can simply write for in loop. I can say for let's take some index. So in what is the name of the object? Book 3. I can say book 3 like this. And now book 3 is only just data is having in key value pairs, just a key value pairs. You can just put that. So console.log of book 3 dot name. Okay. Similarly, you can simply say book 3 dot price. So like this, you can also iterate the object data. Okay, now if I just execute, this will exactly print the data like this. You can see. So because book 3 is having only one data, so name, price, right? So we printed the name here, we printed the price here like this. Okay, so we can also iterate the object if you want to capture all the values. Name and price is got printed. Okay, so no, the data is aligned in the key and value pairs. So we should not use in any other approach. Okay, so if you want to capture the data, we have to specify the key here. Book 3 dot name is nothing but we will get this value. Book 3 dot prices, we will get this value. Okay. So here in for in loop, I is representing what? I is representing an index. Okay, I is representing an index for in loop. I is representing an index. But here we are not using any index. Okay, we can directly get the value from the object itself. So index won't work here basically. So like this. So because the key and value pairs, if you have only data, that is a different case. Because here key and value, we can extract the value only by using keys. Okay, so we can use only this particular looping statement, otherwise no. But most of the times we don't prefer this, okay? So we don't iterate the object. So if you want to iterate the object, there is another way we can do that. Because the object is a collection of properties and behavior. Then again, if I took the properties, every property is having certain values, right? So you can access the values and a method. So one for loop will work for only one object. So you cannot access data from multiple objects at the same time. So you need to go with console.log approach. Okay. So just try to skip this for now. It's not much important. So far, these approaches are clear. First three approaches. Everybody, please confirm in the chat box. So before discussing the class concept, so all three are clear or not? So remember, only interview point of view, these are important. In automation also, we never use it. We use class concept if it is required. I'm just saying class concept we are using, which is always recommendable. That is a fourth approach I am going to show you now. Okay, so or else second priority will given to the first approach. Okay, so first approach, we can directly declare the object and we can assign the data. So first approach, you can go with that. The second priority. The first priority, we always use the class itself. Okay. So line number 9, this is at the time of declaration, it is allowing arrow function. So at the time of implementation, I'm just giving the anonymous function. So I'm using function keyword. This is just a declaration. This is an implementation. Okay. Let me create. No, this is allowed only these arrow functions, guys. Okay. At the time of declaration, just specify like this. This is a notation. Because only in the first approach, declaration and assignment, we are doing only one shot. So we can declare like this. But in all other cases, at the time of declaration, try to use arrow function. This is because the latest feature which is added in the newer features of TypeScript and JavaScript. Only TypeScript, not in JavaScript. Okay, so in TypeScript, arrow function is the latest method. So latest approach. Okay, so at the time of declaration, it is allowed arrow function. It's not allowing anything. But at the time of implementation, we use a function keyword like this. So just make it as an arrow function. So return type is optional. If you specify the return type, you can specify or else is an optional. Yes. So try to use only arrow function at the time of declaration because the TypeScript is allowed only in TypeScript. So TypeScript by default use arrow functions by default in their syntaxes. Okay. Now, so let's move on to the class. And again, if you have any questions, we will discuss at the end of the session. So class concept is most important, guys. So other than three different approaches, we mostly use class concept because this is purely object oriented feature. And rest of them are not object oriented features. They are just another features provided in TypeScript, JavaScript. But purely object oriented means this one. Using class, we need to create an object. Even in other programming languages like Java and Python also, when you want to create an object, we must create a class. Only through class, we can create an object. So what is a class? A class is a blueprint. We can simply say structure. So in the third example, what we have defined in the third type, we first create a type, and with this type we created multiple objects. Even class also, we will create one class like this. And with the same class, same structure, we will create a multiple objects for the same class. So what is a class? Again, class contains the properties and methods. Class contains the properties and methods. But the class is only for defining the structure. Once you create a class, we can create multiple objects. We can create a number of objects, like similar to the type only. Here we create a type, we use the same type for every object. Similarly, we will first create a class. With that class, we can create multiple objects. With that class, we can create multiple objects. A class is what? A blueprint. A blueprint, which contains the properties and methods. Okay, so let us see the fourth one. Okay, so one more thing I forgot to tell here. So before going to the class, so we also have something called intersection types, guys. So here we declare only one type, right? And that we have assigned to the every object. We declare only one type and that we assign to the every object. Suppose I have a two different types. Okay, we can also intersect multiple types. We can also intersect multiple types. Let me show you an example. It's very simple. For the type itself, okay, class we will see later. Intersection types, another example. So in the previous example, we have created only one type. Then we use same type for every object. Sometimes you have a multiple types. We need to combine them. Then how we can do this? For example, let's say I'll create one type here. Let's say personal. And what this contains, it contains a name, which is a string, age, which is a number. This is a structure. This is a type. You can put in the same line or you can put in the multiple lines also. No problem. Okay, like this. So this is one type I declared. Personal is a one type. Now let's say I have another type. Let's say type contact. Type equal to contact. So here I also have some more details. Let's say email, which is also string, and then phone, which is number. Phone, which is a number. Now I have a two different types, personal type and contact type. So this is one type, this is another type. Now when I want to create an object, I want to use both the types. That object should satisfy both the types. So then how we can create an object? By using both the types. So to do this, we need to combine these two types. Then we can create an object. So to combine these types, what we can do is we can create another type. Let's say I'll name it as let's say candidate. Another type. And what is the type of this? It should be combination of personal and contact, both the types. So here we can specify that. Personal and contact. So this is how we can declare the another type. So we can also combine two types into one type. Now by using this, what is a candidate contains now? Tell me what are the properties candidate contains? Name, age, email, phone. So whatever the properties are there, personal type and contact type, both are applicable for candidate type. But again, apart from these two, candidate is also having some other property or some other method. We can define that also. So let me define this. So by default, candidate is getting everything from personal and contact, both the types. In addition, candidate is also having their own method. Let me create one method here. So get contact info. So this is a declaration and returning a string. So type is what? Contact, which is personal and contact type, and one more end followed by this one. This is called intersection types. Intersection type is nothing but we can also combine multiple types. So personal is one type, contact is another type. Now I'm creating another type called candidate, which is a combination of personal and contact. And additionally, I'm also adding another property. So personal contains the two properties. There are no methods. Contact also contains the two properties. There are no methods. Candidate contains a getInfo method, but candidate itself is not having any property, but it will get the properties from personal and contact types. Do you understand these declarations, everyone? So we can also combine multiple types into one single type. And this type is also additionally having one more method. So now these are all just types, not an objects. Now we need to create an object with a candidate type. For example, let's say let candidate. So what's the type of this candidate? Candidate type. Okay. So now tell me what are the things we will come inside the candidate. So what are the properties and methods comes inside the candidate? Here this candidate is an object. Here this candidate is what? A type. So now what are the properties comes under this candidate object? We are specifying candidate type. So candidate type is having personal contact anyway. So the candidate is having name attribute, age attribute, email, phone, get info, get contact info. Everything will comes under candidate or not? Yes. Now we will implement them. We will assign the data. So name equal to, I'll say Scott. So is not assigned to the type candidate. So type personal. Okay, name and age we have given. So type contact, email and phone we have given. So okay, and then another type is called candidate. This candidate is having personal and contact. And yeah, bracket is starting get info. Perfectly fine. So we define them perfectly fine. So at the time of creating an object, let's close this. Yeah. So let candidate is my object name. Or if you're confusing, I'm saying cand colon. And what's the type of this candidate? So the same type we have to specify. This is a type equal to, then we have to assign the data into it. So now we're accessing the first attribute called what? Name. So name is Scott, comma, age, number. So this is not equal to, this is colon, okay? Age, then email. This is an email. What else? We have a phone. Phone is a string or number. Phone is also a number. A number I've given, phone. So what else we have? Apart from the four properties, we additionally specify this method also, right? So that also we need to implement. So get contact info, and we need to implement this as a function. So get contact info function and use this bracket. So here we just return all the data, name, age, email, phone. So how to return this? Using return statement, return backlit operator. So extract each and everything. So I'm writing a simple statement like this. We can simply write a return statement. So this dot name can be contacted as email and a phone. I'm not printing any age here. Okay, just I'm returning this. So this function is got closed here, and this object is got closed here. Get the contact info. Here we should say comma. Okay. So this is how we can simply create an object. Now we can see we defined two different types first, and we have combined those two types into another type. Now we are using this type here. So now this object is referring all the types basically. Okay, this is called intersection types. This is called intersection types. Intersection type means we can intersect in multiple types. We will get the common thing. So whatever is their personal contact, everything will be added to the candidate type. And this particular type we are added to the object. Similarly, you can create a number of objects. If you want to create an object only personal, you can create using personal type. And if you want to create an object for only contact type, then you can create. And if you want to create an object for candidate, then you can create that object. That object contains all the information from personal and contact. So this is called intersection types. Okay. So when I execute this, this will also return the same thing. But we are just creating an object. We are not invoking the method. So how to invoke the method from the object? Using an object dot get contact info. That we need to print in the console.log. Okay. Now execute and see. This is the output we are getting. So these are all about type keyword in TypeScript. So we can define one type and we can create multiple objects with the same type. Or we can also combine multiple types. Okay. So this is also part of third approach. Using type aliases, we can create an objects. Now the fourth one, class. So as I said before, class is a collection of properties and methods. So once we have a class, we can create multiple objects with the same class. So in TypeScript and JavaScript, how to create a class? So to create a class, we use a class keyword. The keyword is called class. And I'm giving class name as a person. Class name as a person. Now inside the class, we can put all the variables and methods. Again, variables are in key value pairs only. Key value pairs. Okay. Now I'll define some variables here. Let's say SSN, which is basically string. And let's say first name. This is also string. Last name. This is also string. Should not put commas here. We should put semicolon. Okay, so it is not Java, but in all other cases, we should put colon, commas. But here, at the time of creating the class, all the key value pairs should be separated with semicolon. Okay, these are the properties. Now, how to create a method? So to create a method, we simply say get full name. I'm just creating a method and this returns a string as an output. Now we'll implement this method. I say return, all three values will be returned. So I say get full name is a method. So in the get full name, I will try to return by combining first name and last name. So return this dot first name, whatever you created here, that's my first name. Variable name is not correct. Okay, first name and last name we are returning. And I'll create another method also. We can create a number of methods. So when I call get full name, it will return only first name and last name. And when I print another method, I'll create, let's say get details, which is also return a string. And inside this, I'm just trying to return SSN along with the full name. See, what I'm doing here is I'm just returning the SSN, whatever we created here. Along with that, I have already created one method called get full name. So what this method will do, this method will combine first name and last name. So here I am calling that method. So this get full name method I'm calling here. Can we call like this? A function called in another function or a method invoked by another method. See, we have in the same class and this method is called from another method. So get details method internally calling get full name. Okay, so this is possible. So one method we can call in another method also. So get full name method is called here. And whatever the return value will be substituted here. Okay, so ultimately which method we have to call? Get details. Get details method will print SSN along with the name. Name in the sense what? Which will combine first name and last name. So this is how we need to declare the class. Same in Java also, exactly similar way, but syntax little bit different. Here in Java, we will define just variables by separating comma, but here we define the key value pairs, SSN, first name, last name. So these are the key value pairs. So we haven't specified value, we declare the keys, that's it. But how to assign the data into this? We haven't assigned any data. So to assign the data into the variables, we can create another method. We can create a set method, get method, or we can also use something called constructor concept. So we have also constructor. Constructor is especially used for assigning the data to the class variables. Assigning the data to the class variables. How to create a constructor in JavaScript and script? In Java and other programming languages, when you create a constructor, the class name should be same. So whatever the name we have given to the class, with the same name, we will create a constructor in another programming languages. But in TypeScript and JavaScript, we don't use the class name. Instead, we use a keyword called constructor. Constructor is my keyword. Okay. So just like a method, constructor also exactly works in similar way. It will take parameters. It cannot return anything, but it will take the parameters. So constructor will never return anything. It will just access the parameters. So in the next class, I will discuss more about class and constructor methods and everything. It is just a brief understanding introduction I'm giving. Okay, how to create a constructor? What is the purpose of creating constructor is to assign the data to the class variable. So here I'm defining some variable SSN, which is basically string. First name is also string. Last name, I hope you guys understood how to pass parameters, how to receive the parameters. In the previous classes, we have understood this concept, right? So similarly, just like a method, constructor also can take the parameters. So what the constructor will do by taking the parameters, we define three variables here. So three parameters. So whatever data we are capturing here will be assigned to the variables. So how to access the class variables here? Using this keyword, we can access. This is always representing the class. So this dot SSN equal to SSN. Can we write like this? Just SSN equal to SSN? Can we write like this? So I'm assigning this SSN value to the class variable. Can we directly do that? So if you do like this, it will just print 0, a default value. Why? Because the constructor cannot differentiate which SSN is belongs to method, which SSN is belongs to class, because both names are exactly same, right? So which one is local variable, which one is a class variable? It cannot differentiate. So we explicitly specify this particular SSN is belongs to class. For that reason, we use something called this keyword. Okay, this dot SSN equal to SSN. Similarly, this dot first name equal to again first name. This dot last name is equal to last name. That's it. So what the constructor will do, constructor will assign the data to the variables. And we will pass this data. We have to pass the data at the time of creating an object of the person class. At the time of object creation of the person class, we will pass some data to the constructor. And at the time of creating an object itself, the constructor will automatically invoked. So what is the difference between constructor and method? See, if the class contains a variables, constructor, and 2 more methods I have created, this is whole one single class. Now in the class, what is the difference between the constructor and method? There are some differences between constructor and method. So what are the differences? So if you have a constructor, constructor will never return any value. Constructor is only for assignment or assigning the data to the class variable. And constructor will be invoked automatically at the time of object creation of the class. So we no need to call the constructor like a method. But if it is a methods, we need to call them using an object. We need to invoke the methods using objects, like object name dot get full name, object name dot get details. We have to call the methods explicitly using an object. Whereas constructor will automatically execute at the time of object creation for this particular class. And methods can return the value, but constructor will never return the value. And constructor is only meant for assigning the data to the variables. Okay, that is the difference. Okay, so now we have created one class which contains some properties, one single constructor which will assign the data to the properties, and two more methods we created just for printing purpose. Now, how to create an object? So to create an object for the class, how to create? So to create an object for the class, let's say, let a person1. Person1 is my object. So I want to create an object for the person. To create an object for the person, you have to use something called new keyword. Okay, new person. So person1 is an object reference variable that is pointing to the person object. So whenever you use new keyword, this will create a new object. It will create a new object for the person class, and that object will be stored in the person1. Okay. Now, why it is giving an error here when I create an object? Because at the time of creating an object, automatically the constructor will be invoked. We are creating an object for what? Person class. So whatever the structure we have in the person class, same structure will be there in person1 also. So at the time of creating an object, constructor will automatically invoke that I said at the before. So when constructor is executing, it is expecting some parameters. So at the time of object creation, so here we are creating object. So at the time of object creation, you have to pass the values. Now let me pass some data here. Let's say SSN. SSN is what? A string. So I'm just passing some number, comma. First name. First name is also a string. Let's say John. Last name. Last name is also string. I'll just pass some value like this. So now error is gone. So at the time of object creation, the constructor will automatically invoked. So once it is invoked, what it will do? It will assign the same data to the variables. Okay, object related. So very important, guys. Just remember this concept. In the next class, I will explain very detailed about classes. There are many things to learn in the class concept. Okay, so let's say this is my class. For one class, we can create multiple objects. Let's say this is my object one. This is my another object. This is my another object. I can create n number of objects if I have one class. So whatever the properties, constructor, methods we created in the class, object will acquire their own properties, methods from the class itself. So now object one is also having same constructor, same variables, same methods. Object 2 is also having their own variables, constructor and method. Object 3 is also having their own variables, constructor and methods. So objects are independent. There is no connection between object 1, object 2, object 3, but still they are derived from the same class using new keyword. Using new keyword, we can create a multiple objects. Okay, so all objects are having same structure, but objects are independent. Every object is having their own property, their own method, their own constructor. But from where the object get the constructor, variables and methods? From the class itself. From the class itself. So when I create a person1 object, right? So these variables, constructor, methods are belongs to person1 also. Same will not be shared. Remember, this is very important point. Objects are never shared these properties, methods and constructors. Object will acquire their own copy of the variables, constructors and methods. Okay. Suppose let's say in the class I created one method called m1. Observe this. In the class I created one method called m1. Now when I say obj1.m1, from where this m1 method will be called? Not from the class. It will be called from the object 1 itself. So this may return some different value. Similarly, when I say object2.m1, now another object is created for the same class. Now object 2 is also acquire the same thing, m1 method. Now when I say m1 method, I call m1 method from object 2. Which m1 method will be invoked from where? Object 2. It may return some other value. Similarly, m1 from object 3 will be returned as some other value. So I'm calling the same method from different objects will give different objects have a different implementation. Same m1 method may implement in different way here. Implementation will be different here different way. But the structure, it is getting from the same class. Okay, just understand this much for now. So basic understanding, same concept in Java, Python also. Class and object. So class is a blueprint. Object is an actually physical object. Class is a logical entity. Object is a physical entity. Now, once we created a class, we can create a number of objects. Now, I created one object called person1, new person, and pass the data. Then, if you want to access the method from person1, how to access methods? Dot get details. This is how we need to call the methods. Okay, so similarly, let me create multiple objects. So person1 object I created. Now I'm creating another object called person2 object. So here I'm passing a different SSN. Let's say 22222. Okay, so here I say some other name. Okay, this is another object for the same class. Now again I'm creating another object. So you can look at this. The data is different from one object to another object. Okay, so here I can say some different name, Scott. Okay, like this. So here person1 dot get details, here person2 dot get details, here person3 dot get details. SSN, which is a string. Okay, so I can create multiple objects for one single class. Okay, yes, objects creates its own copy of variables and methods. Now you tell me, when I say person1 dot get details, how exactly these objects will be stored? When I create an object for the same class, right? So person is my class. Again, I'm showing this. Just listen. Person is my class, actual class. So I created multiple objects. I say person1 object, person2 object, person3 object. Now person1 is acquired their own copy of the variable and values also we have passed. So here, let's say 111 something and John and Kennedy. So these are the details of the person1. %2, what are the details we passed? David and D we passed. So these are the details of a second object. So these are the details of the third object. Scott and S. Okay, now you tell me, when I say person1 dot get details, what is an output you will get here? From person1 object only, John and Kennedy you will get. When I say person2 dot get details, then the method will be called from person2 object. Similarly, when I say person3 dot get details, so this method will be called from the person3 object. So objects are independent. There is no connection between person1, person2, person3. Every object is independent. Every object is having their own variables and methods and constructors, but still all the objects are derived from single class, same class. Okay, so this is the relation between class and objects. Now let me run this code. You can see this. So this is the output. So yeah. We are just calling the method, but we are not printing it actually, right? Because these methods are returning some output, right? So just we need to print them. I say console.log of, sorry, here. Person1 dot get details return something. So console.log of person1 dot get detail. Similarly, here also console.log of person2 dot get details. Here, same console.log of person3 dot get details. Why we are using console.log here? Because those methods are returning the output. If I'm not returning, we no need to use. So this is how we will get the output from 3 different objects we created for single class. Okay, so this is a simple concept of class and object. In the next class, I will discuss more about class. So what is class, what is constructor, and what is static keyword, how the objects will share the common data. Okay, we will discuss a few more important things related to the class in the next class. So for now, just understand these are the 4 different approaches currently we have to create an object. So which one is preferable? Mostly we will prefer fourth option. Okay, using classes, because this is purely object oriented feature. Using class, we can create an object. Okay, so just do one round of practice. Try to understand the things, very important. Interview perspective is important. Okay, but when you come to automation, sometimes we use class concept. Very rare cases, we use class concept itself. We're using, if you want to create any object, we use class concept. The 4th option is important. Okay, so that's all for today's session. So we'll continue in tomorrow's session.